It's been quite a long and painful 6 months of waiting, but we are finally back with Bleach Saturdays. The Bleach anime director Tomohisa Taguchi and his team have promised that we're going to be getting a different experience from Core 2 onwards. So I'm excited to see how this new experience translates into the adaptation of Core 2 of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc. The 14th episode of the new Bleach anime is titled The Last 9 Days, and it continues with where the post-credit scene of episode 13 had left off, with Uryu appearing before Yhwach. The pacing of this episode is in line with what we have expected from Core 1, as episode 14 adapts material from chapters 543 to 546. Now these 4 chapters were very dialogue heavy and they were void of any action sequences. Now if you know, chapters with a lot of action are easy to fly through when they are adapted into anime form. However, I was very interested to see how the first episode of Core 2 would handle all of the dialogue, and if any of it would be cut or streamlined in order to make room for a few anime exclusive scenes which we do know are present within this first episode. So without further delay, let's dive into my manga versus anime comparison of episode 14 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. If you want to check out my thoughts on the all new opening and ending song for Core 2, then be sure to check out my review that I had posted yesterday. Lastly, I'll try my best to refrain from talking about scenes which are one-to-one adapted from the manga, and I'm going to solely focus in this video on what has been cut, changed and added to the anime. The episode begins with a unique anime exclusive scene, which is an extremely chilling sequence that hints at Yhwach's origin story taken from the manga. Now this scene not only uses masterful visual storytelling, but it explains it so incredibly well. One of the main worries that fans had about this backstory was on how it was going to be adapted into the anime, and if there was going to be a need for a narrator or anything of the sort. But surprisingly, Taguchi and his team have come through once more with this incredible sequence that begins with what resembles a number of sperms coming together to form a cell, then a cluster of cells, and then multiplication continues until a baby is formed. This sequence alone answers a massive question that fans have had about how Yhwach had come to be. Knowing what we know about the Soul King and his sentient body parts, most of us had wondered whether if Yhwach had inherited one of the body parts of the Soul King, but instead we get a straight up confirmation that he was conventionally conceived by the Soul King and his partner, meaning that the Soul King at least was able to sexually reproduce with someone else. Now after the baby forms, he's held by what appears to be his mother. Now this is a person who is shaded in a color that implies that they themselves were also more than just a simple human. But this is just about as wholesome as it gets, because afterwards the sequence evolves into something slightly horrifying, because the mother figure is quickly absorbed into the baby, and as the baby falls, a bunch of dark, eerie looking hands reach out to catch the infant. The scene zooms out to show the sheer number of people who were touching the child, and in an almost uplifting way, all the hands begin to light up until all of them are lit in a manner quite similar to the light that the baby's mother originally had. Now this scene tricks you into believing that hey, maybe things aren't so bad, and then in a manner that I can only describe as pure genius, it instantly cuts to the hands suddenly being drained of a red substance that now begins to flow into the baby. The hands that were once lit up and full of life begin to age and wither as more and more of the red energy is drained from them. The seemingly lifeless hands then begin to chant Yhwach's name, and it totally gives me chills seeing this moment. With the baby now absorbing what appears to be the life of the people touching him, he begins to age and eventually forms as the Yhwach as we know today. I feel like this scene on its own could have been broken down in its own separate video because of just how incredible it is. It manages to capture the essence of Yhwach's origin with zero speech, and it makes it somehow even more terrifying than the manga ever could. Following the opening song, we start with an anime exclusive scene with Ichibei speaking to Ichigo about the damage that the Soul Society had sustained, as he calls the Shinigami pathetic and how 1,000 years of peace have made them weak. Ichigo notes how Squad Zero have done nothing in response to help them, but Ichibei reminds him that it's their job to watch over the Serete, not to get involved with protecting it. But he does make an important distinction here, as he states that it is the Zero Division's duty to train the Shinigami, as he warns Ichigo that the Quincy will be back soon. When Ichigo leaves to head back to the Soul Society, Ichibei tells him that he won't be able to beat Yhwach in his current state. This piece of information is very insightful. It's pretty much the only time where we're given a look at Ichibei's opinions of the current era of Shinigami. It is surprisingly similar to what Yhwach also believes, that the Shinigami have grown weaker over the years of peace. But it seems that Ichibei and Yhwach may hold these beliefs for different reasons. Now my favorite thing about this interaction is Ichigo's response. Ichigo doesn't take the slander slander from Ichibei, and he does point out that Squad Zero had done nothing about it to help the Shinigami. But then Ichibei's response in a lot of ways actually reminds me of everything that is wrong with the world of Bleach. The most powerful and skilled Shinigami are all locked away in another dimension, protecting a corpse, while their knowledge and skills could have served for the betterment of reality. As much as Ichibei may have acknowledged the fact that training the Shinigami is a duty of the Zero Division, it is very clear that they barely attend to even that, and in fact they could be blamed for the current weakness within the Soul Society because of the lack of attention that they have paid towards the Gotei 13. Now this scene gives Ichigo a nice bit of agency that he is still willing to ask the important questions instead of just swallowing whatever Ichibei tells him here. After this, we begin adapting manga material with the Sternritter meeting, which is taken from the start of chapter 543. This scene is altered within the anime as it begins with Hashward and Yuobak walking onto the stage, with Hashward telling the subordinates to stand and to salute Yuobak, in comparison to the manga where they were already on stage. Yuobak has a speech here that is extended within the anime as he first reminds the Quincy that 1000 years ago they were defeated by the Shinigami. They had lost many comrades and the very existence of the Quincy was threatened. He goes on to say that the Quincy had only survived by hiding in the shadows, enduring humiliation while they had waited for those 1000 years to pass. He then states that the final battle will soon commence, saying that the time has come to annihilate the Soul Society and the Shinigami, so that the honor of the Quincy can be reinstated. Now he says that he has an announcement to make as events begin to follow the start of chapter 543 as Uryu is called onto the stage. Following the announcement that Uryu will be Yuobak's successor, the reactions are better shown within the anime in my opinion, because in the manga we just see reactions from a crowd of Sternritter, but the anime gives some of the reactions to Bambietta and Pepe for example, and we even get to see Menina say some lines. Now Bazb's outburst here is altered in the anime, because in the manga he yells out in defiance asking Yuobak to hold on for a second. He even has to be stopped by Hashward, who stops him from saying anything else. In the anime we just have Bazb mutter to himself what is going on, and he thinks to himself Yugo, which is the nickname that he has for Hashward, who is later shown to be looking ominously at Bazb. Now the rest of the sequence plays out very similar to how the events unfold within the manga with no real changes. Now next up we have Bambietta's relief scene and her discussion with the Bambis from chapter 544. All of this is brought forward and it happens immediately following the Sternritter meeting, as Bambietta calls one of her subordinates from the meeting into a room. It then immediately cuts to the subordinate being killed. It is worth noting that Bambietta's exchange with the Bambis is streamlined, because a lot of manga material is condensed down in this scene, because in the manga Bambietta reminds them that they too like to make a lot of messes. Lil Toto the Savage calls her a stupid bitch, stating that cookie crumbs and blood splatter are not the same. Meninas nervously says that she could have done it outside. The hot-headed Candice complains about how she keeps killing hot guys whenever she pleases, which is then followed by the witty Giselle asking Candice if she likes picking up hot subordinates too. Now when the Bambis start to argue, Bambietta tells them to keep the noise down as she has a lot on her mind, revealing that she is worried about the future of the Wandenreich, which is in response to Uryu having been appointed as Yuobak's successor. Now this is how things unfold within the manga, but this scene in the anime is cut down and changed considerably, as it has Bambi say that at least she did it in her own room, which is a variation of Meninas's line from the manga. This is so that Candice can respond to Bambietta with her lines from the manga, with her complaining about Bambietta killing hot guys, instead of the entire conversation being made about Bambietta's rather questionable habits. That topic is instead pushed to the side so that we can draw attention to Bazb causing a ruckus outside. Now this is actually a significantly better change that sets up Bambietta's character in a really nice way. She obviously is angry about Yuobak's decision to make Uryu his successor, but she channels her anger quite differently than someone like Bazb, who would rather spend his time raging about things that he doesn't like. He is overtly angry, while Bambietta does things more covertly. This characterization really convinces me of Kubo's plans to flesh out the Bambis much more than he had done in the manga. In the anime, Candice asks Bambietta why is it that she doesn't just join Bazb, because she must be pretty annoyed too, but Bambietta says that she's not really because it's stupid. Now this is Bambietta's roundabout way of showing that she is annoyed with her mixed signals. The anime then cuts back to material from chapter 543 with Bazb reacting to the news in front of the Sternritter. In the manga he appears to be with BG9, Mask and Kangdu, but in the anime he is with all of the Sternritter when he expresses his opinion on Uryu. The dialogue incidentally is reworked so that a few more Sternritter are able to give their input on the matter. Lil Toto has an anime only line as she asks Bazb what is there to explain, because this is the first time that any of them are hearing about a successor. Meninas also has an anime-only line where she wonders if Yhwach doesn't have long to live. Giselle is then seen to tease Candice by saying that she should make a move on Uryu, but Candice yells that she doesn't belong to the streets, and that she isn't that easy to win over. The Bambis are in fact given a lot more love in Core 2, as we get a real solid look at the dynamic that they have as a friendship group. It's actually really awesome seeing all of them just sitting around and talking about their uncertainties, because we're left with a rather nice group dynamic that has formed between these girls. Now, Bazz-B leaving to speak to Yhwach has been modified in the anime. In the anime, some scenes are cut, like Bazz-B pushing aside one of his aides, with Mask asking where he is going, and Bazz-B explaining that he is going to speak to Yhwach. Mask insists that he stops in the manga, saying that Yhwach will not tolerate his insubordination. He is then interrupted by Hashward, who stops him from going further. But in the anime, things are different, as he storms out of the room, but he is blocked from leaving by Hashward. We skip the scenes of the aide being pushed over and Mask protesting. Also, this way, the anime has their argument occur in front of all of the Sternritter, as opposed to in front of the spying Pepe and Askin, who later appears. Now, the anime incidentally removes all mentions of Pepe spying on their argument. Following this, we have some changes that were made to Uryu's initiation ritual, where he acquires his own shrift. In the manga, he drinks his blood first, and he learns that he will be bestowed with the letter A as his shrift. This is before he goes on to ask why is he his successor. In the anime, this scene is changed, as Uryu asks why is he his successor before he drinks the blood. Now, this makes a lot more sense in my opinion, because he isn't fully convinced at this point, and hearing the reasoning from Yhwach helps to give Uryu a convincing reason to complete the ritual, instead of having questions after the ritual is complete. Him asking why he is the successor is taken from the start of chapter 544, and it is reworked into his initiation scene from chapter 543. In addition to this reworked scene, there are also lines cut where Uryu comments on how him being appointed as the successor will cause friction amongst the Sternritter. Now, this is strange because another scene from the same chapter linking back to Uryu's comment here is also cut, and it's between Hashward and his personal aide. I guess I'll quickly talk about it here, since the sequence of events have been chopped around and changed so much between chapters 543 and 544. Now, this scene involving Hashward and his aide occurs when we see Hashward returning to his quarters, and his aide speaks to him about Yhwach's recent announcement. She makes a suggestion to him saying that Yhwach may need some advice regarding the decision that he has just made. Hashward explains that this is their Majesty's wish, because he is aware that naming Uryu as his successor will cause upset within the Sternritter, and Yhwach is aware of this. Even Uryu had pointed this out to Yhwach earlier, but Hashward theorizes that this was done purposefully, so that the anger of the Sternritter will be directed towards Uryu, the new recruit, regardless of who he is or what power he may come to possess, and whatever his true intentions may be, it will be difficult for him to now make any move now that everybody has their eye on him. He is left with no choice but to dedicate himself to Yhwach and to follow his will. Now, this is even if Uryu has realized the real reasoning behind why Yhwach had baited him out in the open by making him his successor. So all of these mentions of the reasoning behind Yhwach's decision to make Uryu his successor are all removed from the anime, notably omitting Hashward's scene, which was the first hint in the story that Yhwach and Hashward were distrustful of Uryu, and that set him up by making this announcement. So it seems like Kubo is playing the long haul when it comes to Uryu's betrayal, and he doesn't want to drop any hints when it comes to the manga. Coming back to Uryu and Yhwach's conversation during the ritual, their conversation continues with excerpts taken from chapter 544, along with some anime-only additions to their conversation. The first is this anime-only scene which is added of Uryu visiting his mother's grave. The grave appears to be the site of a mass burial, which leads me to deduce that this is where the victims of Ashwalin were buried, because there were so many people that had died that there wasn't enough time to make proper graves for each of them. In the anime, Yhwach and Uryu's conversation is extended here, as Yhwach states that there was a reason why he had survived Ashwalin. Uryu then says that ever since the day that he had lost his mother, he had been wondering why is it that his mother had died and he had survived. He questions his purpose. Uryu reveals that the answer was written within the journal of Soken Ishida. Now, I can't stress how much that this change had excited me, because this goes all the way back to an answer that Kubo had given on Club Outside. He was asked why is it that Uryu had survived Ashwalin, and then had responded that due to how complex this explanation is, he's going to try and see see if he can include it within the upcoming anime. And this scene between Uryu and Yhwach 100% confirms that Kubo's venture was successful, and that he was able to add all the extended lore on why Uryu survived and what makes him so special. I think that the anime is taking a totally different approach and giving Uryu's betrayal more depth, and rightly so. It is extending his role within an arc that is dedicated to his race. In the added dialogue during this scene, Uryu says that he has confirmed the words of Yhwach to be true, stating that he understands that Quincy and Shinigami can never get along, and he understands who he really is, as we see visuals of him and Ichigo once again emphasizing that Uryu has turned sides, and once again the anime is doing a better job at this betrayal than what was shown within the manga. Uryu says that he has severed his ties from the past in order to bury the Shinigami. Yuha tells him that he will show him his future as Uryu drinks his blood, as we cut back to material from the end of chapter 543. This is where Yhwach tells him that he will receive a shrift with the same letter as him. Because there was a lot of chopping and changing going on here, we get to see an awesome extended sequence of Uryu drinking Yhwach's blood here, which was an excellent addition in my opinion. Now we hit the midpoint of the episode as we cut to a streamlined scene from Hueco Mundo that was adapted from the end of chapter 544. In the anime, we immediately cut to Urahara working on Kilge's medallion, whereas in the manga, this was the last thing that we were shown from this particular scene. In the manga, we catch up with Orihime and the others who are currently training. She appears to have traveled to the Negal ruins on her own as she wonders how Chad is doing. Urahara had a strange flying creature called Pero accompany Orihime to the ruins. It seems as though Chad and Orihime were tasked with getting to the Negal ruins separately, and this was a form of training for them. Chad had already arrived as he greets her, saying that everyone is here, as Orihime wonders who else could be accompanying them. The anime on the other hand changes this entirely, as Orihime is already with Chad at the ruins and Urahara is observing them from the Pero creature. Chad tells her that they should start training as they don't have much time, and we see a strange cloaked figure standing next to them. Now when Orihime says that she wonders what Ichigo is doing, we cut to yet another anime exclusive scene here, and it's Ichigo removing his robe and speaking to Ichibei, continuing the training discussion from the very start of the episode. Ichibei once again tells him that he will not be able to defeat Yhwach in his current state, as he needs to surpass a Shinigami, which Ichigo says that he is okay with doing. Ichibei says that he can hone his Zanbakudo skills as much as he wants to, but he will still remain a Shinigami. Ichigo then picks up a wooden stick as Ichibei says that they will now begin, and the area is then transformed into what Ichibei describes to be a sacred place which you cannot enter without the permission of the Soul King. Ichibei reveals that he will now test him here in order to see if he is worthy of surpassing a Shinigami. In another anime only scene where we see Shunsui speaking to Nanao in front of the Squad 1 barracks, he tells her that he hopes that things are going well for Ichigo, as Nanao questions if he is worried. Shunsui notes that Ichibei is a very cunning man, saying that he has taken Ichigo, but who knows if Ichibei is acting in the best interest of the Serete. Nanao is surprised to hear this, as Shunsui changes the topic and says that they should focus on what they can do here for now. Now, a scene from the very start of chapter 545 is cut from the anime, and it's a catch up with what's going on in Kurosaki Clinic, where we see Yuzu has just made food and she calls out to the others to come and eat. Ishin is busy with a patient and Karin is playing a game. She wonders when Ichigo will be coming back from training camp. We then get this conversation between Hiyori and Shinji, which is rearranged in the anime to appear before Rukia and Renji begin their training with Ichibei, but in the manga it happens after they start their training with Ichibei. Following this, we get some Rukia and Renji scenes from chapter 545, and everything is the same aside from them speaking about reishi density within the royal palace, and some comedic material referencing their visit to Senjumaru's palace, which is cut from the anime. In the manga, Renji notes that they are still not used to the air in the royal palace, since the reishi density of the atmosphere is very high here. Rukia says that it feels like they are underwater, as she wonders what effect this level of reishi density will have on them. Now, the Senjumaru cut content involves Rukia and Renji commenting on the different palaces that Byakuya will be visiting now that he is healed. He will be going to Kiryo's palace to eat next, then training his sword with Nimaya. Following this, he will be taken to Senjumaru's palace as Rukia and Renji were, and they describe it to be a measurement from hell. This is where Senjumaru had told them to remove their clothes so that she could properly take measurements of their proportions for the Shihakusho that she will end up creating for them. Rukia dreads to think about Byakuya going through the same humiliation that they had went through. I guess that this stuff from chapter 545 had to be cut, considering all of the changes and additions that have been made thus far. The rest of the episode adapts Shunsui meeting Ichigo's friends from the end of chapter 545 545 and continuing on to chapter 546, which appears to be pretty faithful to the manga. This is aside from streamlining this entire scene by cutting some comedic moments involving Keigo's character when he tells Shunsui that he must be joking after he reveals to them that he is here to talk to them about saying goodbye to Ichigo. During this conversation, when Shunsui says that Ichigo is in a special place, we see some visuals from an earlier anime-only scene of Ichibei training Ichigo. After Shunsui hands them 3 soul tickets, we see that a panel is cut from the anime, where Tatsuki suggests that these tickets should also be given to Ichigo's family too, as Shunsui states that he has already sent some to his family. Now I am assuming for whatever reason Kubo had this cut from the anime, because I was getting really hyped for a bonus scene of Shunsui speaking to Isshin, which would have been incredible. Now following this, we get some anime-only scenes while Orihime is giving her speech about everyone working together. We see the cloaked individual again here, and we also quite notably see the Fullbringers Yukio and Riruka appear in front of Urahara's tent. Now this is some excellent additions that they have made into the manga, and hopefully this means that the Fullbringers will be getting an expanded role within the anime. Now the episode comes to a close with the Serete being engulfed by the Wandenreich city, and while Yuhobak says the Quincy Emperor song, we get some anime-only scenes of the Sternritter marching out for battle. So what a way to start off the second core with episode 14, because there was so much more changes and additions to this episode than I was expecting. The pacing, while at 4 chapters, did a great job of cutting down unnecessary scenes that don't align with the direction of the anime, which we fully know now Kubo is spearheading. He wrote the dialogue scripts for Core 2. He is sitting in on the voice recording sessions for the episodes. So when you see any cuts, additions and changes that are made to the sequence of events, then be reassured that they have been overseen by Kubo. Now I am really looking forward to seeing all of the action kicking off in next week's episode, which is titled Peace from the Shadows. So as always, what did you guys think about episode 14 of the 1000 Year Blood War arc? Do you think that we have had a strong start to the second core? Do you agree with the changes that have been made in comparison to the manga? I really look forward to reading all of your comments, and I cannot wait to see you next week for my breakdown and analysis of episode 15 of the all-new Bleach 1000 Year Blood War arc anime.
If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.